welcome one and all. It's time for yet another red hot, spicy, tingling, old world battle report. Dwarves versus the vile, disgusting Beastmen. But not just any dwarves, trying out the royal clan for the first time. So, let's leap in and see what we've got. Now, I don't have my Lord on Shield Bearers painted yet, so he's not in there. I don't have my pony carts painted yet, but soon they will be added. For now, what do we have, and what are we trying out? Well, as I was putting together my list, I noticed some of the things that you can't take in the Royal Clan, and a few strange differences. So, for example, Iron Breakers are in rare for the Royal Clan, and there are certain war machines that you can't take. You can't take cannons, can't take organ guns, and in core, you've got the choice of Longbeards, Quarrelers, and Royal Clan Warriors, rather than Standard Warriors. The difference between them is that the Royal Clan Warriors have Gromril weapons and Gromril armour, I think, as well. They have all the Gromril. Or is it just weapons? I know they do have the armour as well. And that's it. Another notable feature of the Royal Clans is that they get +1 strength on the charge, as long as you charge a sufficient distance, which you usually will. So, I'm trying out a list with quite a few combat units in it, so I don't think it's necessarily the strongest list you can make, but it's going to be fun to try anyway. So, what do we have? Let's start with the Anvil of Doom. Here's the Anvil, and the Anvil has been given some runes. We have the Rune of Preservation, which makes it immune to multiple wounds and killing blow. We've got 2 runes of spell breaking for those nice auto dispels if the enemy chooses to come into range of the Anvil. And the Master Rune of Balance for the once per turn 3 dice dispel and discard the lowest. So all the anti-magic packed into the Anvil of Doom. Other heroes, we've got a Thane with a gun. So this is the new combo that people are doing, and I have got the new Thane with a gun on the Oathstone, but it's not painted yet, so this guy is standing in as a Thane with a gun for the moment. And this combo features a Thane with a handgun, with the Master Rune of Bursting Flame, the Rune of Accuracy, and the Rune of Rapid Fire. So he fires twice, he suffers no modifiers to his shooting at all, so he just always hits on a 3, and his shots explode when they hit into 2d3 hits instead. So you can potentially get a significant number of hits with him, and you can move him around, reposition him, shoot at things that are in cover, shoot at skirmishers. You don't care because he ignores negative modifiers. So he's hopefully going to have a good time, and he is the kind of thing that you're going to see in a lot of lists for various dwarf subfactions, not just this one. And the reason that it's a Thane instead of an Engineer is because an Engineer can't take as many points in runes, so they can't also take all of them. They can only take 2 of those runes, I think. And also, you can't take Engineers in the Royal Clan anyway, so for this army, it has to be the Thane with a gun. We have another Thane, who is in the Hammerers, who is the BSB, who is illegally positioned, I think, at the moment, because I believe they have to go close to the middle, so he'll move over here in a bit. But instead of going the full "why would anyone charge the Hammerers unit" combo, he's only got the Master Rune of Grungni for the 5+ ward save and 6+ to nearby units in the shooting phase. Because it's all very well tooling up the Hammerers with the various runes that make it very unwise to charge into them, but why would anyone attack them? I'm finding that the Hammerers just don't get enough work done during the game when they're fully tooled up because people avoid them. So they are drilled as well, this unit of Hammerers. And so we've gone through heroes. In core, we've got 2 units of 10 Quarrelers. One of them are on the hill in 2 ranks, and the other one is out on this flank in a long rank, and they all have great weapons as well. So potentially decent in combat. No Rangers in this list. Royal Clan doesn't seem to like Rangers. Then we have got a Grudge Thrower with no runes on it, right here. We have got 20 Royal Clan Warriors. So, a big blob of warriors there. And they have been given the Rune of Fear and the Rune of Battle. So they cause fear and they get +1 to combat resolution. So just trying some stuff out. I didn't know what I was going to be facing in this game, so this list isn't tailored in any way. And then into special, we've got, in addition to the Grudge Thrower, the 13 Hammerers. And they do not have a magic standard at all, so quite a cheap unit compared to usual. In rare, we've got 2 lots of 5 Iron Drakes, which at the moment are one behind the other on the hill. Obviously they're going to move before they start shooting. And 13 Iron Breakers who are out on this side. So some combat units with no heroes in. We've also got a Doom Seeker who is over here with his extra large butt cheeks. And he doesn't have any upgrades either. So I've just thrown in a lot of combat units. See how the Royal Clan Warriors do. And not a lot of heroes, mainly the Anvil. But what am I up against? So it's obviously the filth-encrusted woodland-dwelling beastmen. But what is in the list? So this is a chariot. It's just a standard gore chariot. This is a lone dragon ogre represented by a giant rat. And this is a razor gore, which are the pigs for the beastmen. So pretty fast, and you don't want to get hit by them. They do decent damage on the charge, as do chariots. Then we get into the centre, and there's a couple more chariots. These 2 are the mages, I think, or at least this one is. Oh no, this one is actually. I remember how to tell the difference. So the spiky pigs and the non-spiky chariots are the heroes that cast spells, and the non-spiky pigs with the spiky chariots are the fighty regular gore chariots. So there's a level 4 on a chariot. There is a unit of 3 dragon ogres, and I'm not a big fan of these dragon ogre models, but these ones do look cool. Then we've got a unit of gore with a standard bearer, a BSB in there, and there's also the mini version of the Doom Bull, whose name I've forgotten. But he's not quite as good as the Doom Bull. You can see there are some harpies at the back there. More dragon ogres, another unit of 3, and another razor gore and a unit of 2 razor gores together. And then all the way out on this flank there is the other spellcaster chariot. This one's also level 4. So we've got 2 level 4s. What are the main issues with those as far as I'm concerned? Well, they both have Vile Tide, which is loads of hits, potentially, and it's only strength 2, but it doesn't allow armor saves, which dwarves obviously dislike. And my Anvil buff, for example, that boosts armor saves is useless against that. Both of them also have Plague of Rust, which means they can reduce your armor save as well, and then hit you with other things, and you won't get a save against anything. So, pretty scary combo, and 2 level 4s, it's going to be tricky to shut them down, especially on chariots, because they can just move in and out of range of the Anvil whenever they feel like. They can stay out of range to cast their spells. They can move in to stop the Anvil spells, because being a level 4 on average, they should stop all my spells, and I should fail to stop most of theirs. And with 2 level 4s, I'm going to run out of auto dispels very quick as well. So I win the roll-off, and I'm going first, so let's see if I can kill with my shooting, because my overall plan is to throw the Doomseeker out, see if it can get killed, try and get these big combat units fighting, Hammerers in particular desperately want to get into a fight, and try and shoot up the nearest big threat of a target. So anything on a chariot or anything fast that's about to hit my lines, try and focus fire on things and destroy them. So immediately, the Grudge Thrower opens fire and destroys one of the normal gore chariots out on the right flank, which causes the pig to fall back in good order as well, which is great. So really good start out on that flank from the Grudge Thrower. My other shooting puts a couple of wounds onto this Razor Gore. It might just be 1 wound. I think they start with 3. And that's about it. Moved up a little bit repositioning. The Iron Drakes have changed their positioning a little bit. One of them is totally off the hill, one of them is partially off the hill. The Thane with a gun is hanging out here, and he missed both of his shots in the first turn, unfortunately, on 3s. And you can see that I have given the Iron Breakers rerolls on their armor saves as well, which might come in handy. Into the Beastmen turn 1, because my turn 1 wasn't very action-packed. So we've got Dragon Ogres and Razor Gore units moving forward as fast as they can towards my lines. And same for the Lone Dragon Ogre and the Razor Gore. And one of the chariots, this is one of the level 4s, and this is not the General. The one on the left-hand side, which is over here somewhere, that one has re-rolls on magic missiles. From, is that the hag tree that does that? So potentially that's going to be a lot of deadly wounds dealt from Viletide. The one on this side I think was able to select its spells. So there's also some Vortex spells available, but really the two main ones I'm concerned about are Plague of Rust and Viletide. There are some buffs as well. There's a 5+ ward save spell. And everything is moving up in a big blob towards my lines, which I'm not too displeased about because the hammerers want to get swinging and get in on the action. The Dragon Ogres have great weapons, so if they were to charge the hammerers from more than 3 inches away, the hammerers would go up to initiative 4 and they would strike simultaneously, because I haven't taken any of the anti-charge runes on the hammerers to try and entice a little bit of a fight to take place. Hello in the chats to Stu and Bad Squiddo and Gilfoss and Peter. Hello. Yes, it is a lot of chariots. So, not much firing at me in this turn. The enemy are quite far away. And you can see, though, that with a little bit of a spellcasting flurry, 3 of the Quarrelers are killed and they fall back in good order after failing their leadership test. But, on the plus side, that moves the unit out of range of the other spells. So, worked out quite well. I should point out as well that at least one of them has Wind Blast, which is why, when I knew that was an option for the game, that's why nothing is hugging the back of the table, because it can just be pushed and nudged over the edge. It makes you give ground, and if you give ground at the table edge, you die. Turn 2 for me. So, Grudge Thrower this turn lands a direct hit onto the Dragon Ogre and puts it on 1 wound remaining, so that's good. Iron Drakes reposition as well and start firing. You can see an enemy Vortex here as well. So with all my shooting, I kill, I think the unit of 2 Razor Gores is just totally destroyed, and the other one is wounded as well. Other than that, a little bit of shooting from the hill, from the Quarrelers, onto this unit of Dragon Ogres. And whittling down the threats, the Royal Clan Warriors charge into the Dragon Ogres there, and take 5 casualties, and we end up with a tie in combat, which means that I win, due to having a musician in the Royal Clan Warriors. The reason I'm throwing these guys out first is because the hammerers aren't in range to charge. The Doomseeker wasn't really in range. He could have attempted a charge, but he would have probably failed. And hopefully that entices more units in to fight the Royal Clan Warriors, because then we've got the hammerers here as support and they will be able to actually charge something next turn if we get a bit of fighting going. So I could have done with actually losing the combat and going back a little bit, because that would bring the hammerers closer. But I ended up winning and chasing after them so that they don't get an initiative bonus for charging me in the next turn. On to turn 2 for the Beastmen, and this is how it looks going into it. So am I concerned? I've been dishing out wounds. There's 1 wound been done to the General's chariot over here. He's a level 4. The other level 4 is here. Lots of wounds and damage dished out over there. Mostly I've killed the things I was trying to kill, the Razor Gore chariot over there, and I've plinked wounds onto some other important targets. It's this big blob of meat here, the 2 units of Dragon Ogres and the Gore unit with a bull, that are quite scary, with a chariot for support. So hopefully somebody hits the Doomseeker, and then they are stuck there waiting for the hammerers to charge them. That would be nice, wouldn't it? So you can see a 5+ ward has been cast onto these Dragon Ogres. This is the one on the right. And charges are going to be declared. There we go, there's a charge from the Gore into the Royal Clan Warriors. The chariot goes into the Doomseeker on its own, which may well be enough with the impact hits. Doomseekers are quite easy to kill, it seems. And we've got these 2 units both in combat with the Royal Clan Warriors now. The level 4 on the right flank moves into range to try and annihilate these Quarrelers. And also, the Dragon Ogre decided not to charge them, because that would have been a very silly idea, since it's on its last wound, and there are still 7 of them left to stand and shoot. So it just moves closer, so if next turn it's still alive, it'll be able to charge untouched. The hammerers have gone into a slightly longer line. What I wanted to do here is spread the hammerers out a bit, move forward, and then spread them out again. But now that the enemy are in range to dispel the Anvil with the level 4 over here, then I'm not really getting any of my Anvil spells off. Which is the usual situation with the Anvil, sadly. So I'm still not 100% sold on its value. Over on this side, you can see that all the Quarrelers are dead now from some magic missiles, like Vile Tide from this Shaman. So they are toast. And I've got one more turn to try and kill these guys before something probably charges the Grudge Thrower. The Hammerers staring into the spot where the Doomseeker was just killed. And 5 Royal Clan Warriors die. I lose the combat. You can see they've gone on to the next row for combat result there. So up to 11. I only had 5. So the Royal Clan Warriors use their shield wall. And let me have a look here. Royal Clan Warriors. Yes, they have shield wall, but not stubborn, unlike the Ironbreakers and the Hammerers. So they actually die because they full on flee. Actually, no, that's a lie. They end up back here. I remember now. They fled, but they bounced through my entire army and ended up right at the back there. And the second unit of Iron Drakes is still there, but the first one has also teleported because they panicked because the Royal Clan Warriors fled through them, and they fell back in good order and bounced all the way over here. So one of those really weird old world situations with units bouncing through your entire army. But the fact that the Iron Breakers fled, the Iron Drakes should I say, means that the Dragon Ogres didn't reach anybody with their pursuit move. So they're now just sitting in the open waiting to be shot on my turn 3. So the Grudge Thrower takes aim and does nothing. The Hammerers. So I had to consult the rulebook on this one. And Gilthar says the Clan Warriors can pay 1 point per model for stubborn. Yes, that is a very worthy upgrade for them. Stubborn is always good, especially on a unit that you want to use as like an Anvil. So definitely worth it, I would say. So, the Hammerers. What was I looking up in the rulebook? I was looking up how many times you can redirect a charge, and I couldn't find any reference to only being able to do it once or twice or any particular number. So I'm going on the assumption that you can do it as many times as you want. If that's wrong, someone let me know, preferably with a page reference, because we're scrambling through the rulebook and couldn't find anything that said you can only do it once. So you can see I do actually get off my buff to the armour of the Hammerers, and they're all ready for the fight. However, the units they want to charge, if we go back and look, they initially try and charge the Gore in the flank, but the Gore decide that they're going to flee, which is risky because if you roll low, the Hammerers could just kill you in one go. But they do roll enough to get out of my charge range. I then redirect the charge into the Chariot, and the Chariot flees as well, which you can do. If it's redirected charge, you can't stand and shoot, but you can flee or hold, I think are your only options against a redirected charge. Then, the Hammerers redirect the charge into the Dragon Ogres, but do not make it. So, Hammerers not fighting anyone, but they have gone quite wide now, and some enemy units are fleeing, and you never know, they might keep going and not come back, and that would be fun. Iron Drakes and the Royal Clan Warriors who rallied here, they're trying to spread out a bit so they're not so congested at the back. You can see I've lost an Iron Breaker there because they charged into the, let's go back, into these Dragon Ogres here. We determined it is actually in the flank. Oh no, that's the front, I remember. But I got rid of this vortex anyway. So they go into the front, and there they are. That's the most they can maximise with the charge distance I rolled. I then do some shooting from the hill as well, and not much of any value is accomplished though, so I think we're into the enemy turn here now. So this Chariot continues fleeing, the one that fled from the charge of the Hammerers. That human hand in action there, moving some Gore. So on this side you can see a 5+ ward on the level 4 on the Chariot, and Plague of Rust on the Grudge Thrower, so it'll have no armor save at all now against anything. And it's getting charged by a Razor Gore. Razor Gore joining in on the charge in the Ironbreakers, along with the other level 4 on the Chariot, who's down to 3 wounds now. So it's a good reason to be in combat, because he's just going to keep getting shot. I think it was the Thane with the handgun that took off more of his wounds. Gilthoth says, page 129 says you cannot redirect again. Excellent. Good to know. Thankfully it didn't make a difference because I failed the charge anyway. But they do have a habit of hiding rules that you're looking for. Sometimes it's because the rules are spread across different sections. Sometimes they're just weirdly arranged in the paragraphs on the correct page. So, the Razor Gore gets into the Grudge Thrower over here. And everyone in on the Iron Breakers. So, the Chariot with Impact Hits will be going first. And the Razor Gore. Then the Iron Breakers will go. And then the Dragon Ogres. Marty wishes to know where the battle mat is from. This particular battle mat, I don't know. This is at the TSN Arena, this mat. It actually looks very similar to one I've got. I don't know if it's identical, but I can ask where all the mats have come from for the venue. Okay, so we're in combat here. You can see that the level 4 on a chariot on the right flank has come all the way around the back of my lines now. Let's see, Gilthoth says, actually, that could be interpreted as my biased point of view while reading. I read everything with a 6th edition lens. Interesting. If anyone else has any input on whether you can redirect a charge multiple times, let us know. So you can see the Dragon Ogre, the lone Dragon Ogre that's disguised as a rat for this game, is moving up to support the Razor Gore. And these Gore, you can see that they've rallied, so they're back to facing where they want to be now, which is at the Hammerers. Now, as I observe this situation here, I'm thinking, if those Dragon Ogres stay where they are, the Hammerers can flank charge them. If this combat is ongoing next turn, I should be able to flank charge them. So that's very exciting. And let's see if anyone gets killed here. You can see that just one Quarreler is killed from a Vile Tide, I think, from this Shaman. 5 Ironbreakers dead. Even more Ironbreakers dead as the other units go. I've done a couple of wounds. I've nearly killed a Dragon Ogre. Nearly killed the Razor Gore. But the Ironbreakers not doing too well. They are stubborn with Shield Wall, though. Let's have a look. Peter says, I love when people proxy models into a specific theme. Stu says, been playing it that you can redirect a charge once as couldn't find anything to the contrary. Well, do you need to find something that says you can't do this specifically to find that you can't do it? Or do you actually need a rule that says you must stop doing this now? Or do you just assume that you can keep doing it? I don't know. I don't know whether I would expect the rulebooks to state you may do this once, or whether they just imply that you can do it once. Because if it's worded something like, if the enemy has moved out of your charge range, blah blah blah, then you may redirect the charge into another viable target. Then if the next unit does the same thing, that would suggest that that rule is set off again. So it needs someone to pore over that. Hilariously, the Razor Gore does not kill the Grudge Thrower crew, down to the last model. And it's not looking great at the moment. And because of the position of this unit now, because the Ironbreakers gave ground, then that means the Hammerers do no longer have a flank charge into the Dragon Ogres. Because you can't cheekily extend the ranks with drilled and then charge into the flank. They have to be within the arc first. So I've got decisions to make now, because the Ironbreakers are not long for this world. All those have died there. And into my turn 4. So the Ironbreakers are murdered during this turn. But what else am I looking at here? So the Hammerers, I don't think they're in range to charge anybody, but they're going to move up and look for a fight next turn. The Grudge Thrower is going to die soon. The Anvil hasn't been able to do much because there's been enemy spellcasters nearby who are stopping most of my spells. The Royal Clan Warriors, what remains of that unit, is still stuck kind of behind the Anvil, so they need to find a way out. The Iron Drakes are still up and running, so I can shoot, but I don't have a great target at the moment, because all 3 of these units would be nice targets to shoot at, but they're all in combat already. The Thane, with a handgun, is in a similar situation, so I just need to find some targets for all my shooting, and then position units so that the ones that I don't mind getting engaged in combat are overrun when the Ironbreakers die. So turn 4. And I angle the Iron Drakes so I could shoot over the top at this unit of Dragon Ogres, I think. My shooting's been very mediocre so far, though. I've usually been doing like 1 wound each time. So the Dragon Ogres overrun past the Ironbreakers into the unit of Iron Drakes there, after the Ironbreakers are murdered horribly. And more shooting, but can't do any more wounds to anything significant. This guy didn't get wounded in combat, he's still on 3. Gilthar says, I think I've mostly given up on the Anvil, as much as I love it. 2 different units, Armor Bane 2 just feels more effective, even though you get hit with more spells. Yes, I'm kind of leaning that way. I'm not seeing much value in the Anvil at the moment. Because you have a lot of wizards, especially casting vortex spells that don't even need to come within range. They can move in, slap down the vortex, and then never come back, so you can't actually dispel it at all, so it just stays there forever. So if it's a Pillar of Fire, for example, then you're pretty much stuck. So even with the reduced range of a Runesmith or a Rune Lord compared to the Anvil, you can actually move closer to the enemy and maybe chase them down a bit. So I think it is a massive point sink, the Anvil, and I'm not seeing the value, because the enemy can stay out your range if they don't want to be dispelled, and a Fated Dispel against a level 4 is basically useless. And then when they want to shut down my spells, they can just move into range with a level 4, and then on average they're shutting down all my spells. So the Anvil at that point is not doing much except being very expensive and possibly dying. Gilthar says, in my tournaments, the envelope so easily wiped out by Dragon Lords too. Is that supposed to be the Anvil is wiped out by Dragon Lords? On this side, you can see not much has happened because the hammers obviously can't reach anybody yet. So they've just moved into position, waiting to be charged. I think they might have maybe changed the ranks or changed their angle a slight little bit. So, turn 4 for the beasts. So my hope is that both these units try and charge me, but one of them fails. So preferably the Gore fail, and the Dragon Ogres get in, because I'll be striking at the same time as the Dragon Ogres, I think. So I'll be able to kill quite a lot of them. Plague of Rust onto the Quarrelers on the hill. Plague of Rust onto the Iron Drakes who are in combat. It's a very powerful spell. Then, the level 4 Shaman on the chariot on this side, who is the general, is charging the Thane with a handgun. And over on this side, the Dragon Ogre on its own, down to its last wound, is joining in on the charge against the Grudge Thrower. So, charge goes in there, and you can see some of the Quarrelers have been killed with magic missiles. And then even more, we're down to 3 now. Very sad. The Grudge Thrower is killed, as you'd expect, by those 2 beasties. And we've got Harpies landing behind our lines as well. Dragon Ogres kill the Iron Drakes, then overrun into the 3 Quarrelers. The Thane is killed by the Shaman, who then overruns into the Anvil, and now the Anvil's in combat, so I can't even attempt spells or dispels anymore. So, I think, let's see. Croesus, did you manage to get Ungrim Ironfist? Yes, I did get Ungrim. I got Ungrim and the Thane with a gun on an Oathstone, so I'm going to be painting those soon as well. I have to prioritise what's going to be painted first, because I'm working on the Pony Cart and the Lord on Shield Bearers. Then, I think I want 1 Engineer with a gun. I want the Thane with a gun. Ungrim, and possibly the 2nd Grudge Thrower as the priority painting targets. And Doomseekers as well. So there's quite a few things that I want to get painted rapidly. So hopefully I'll dive straight on that now. It's getting cooler as well, so it's going to be easier for me to paint. I haven't been able to do that much when it's hot. My room does get very warm. And then if I've got fans blasting everywhere, then it just dries up the paint on the brush, which isn't ideal. And the wet palette doesn't like it either. So, the Anvil is now in combat. Turn 5 for me. What am I going to do in this perilous situation? I don't know if the Hammerers are going to be in range to charge anybody. The Quarrelers are going to die. The Anvil is in combat, but the Anvil could actually beat that level 4 on a chariot. Potential there. The Iron Drakes are going to try and kill these flying fiends. And let's see how it goes. So the Iron Drakes, hilariously, only kill 2 of them. And I think the champion, because they do have Cinderblast bombs as well, I just keep missing with the torpedo or the bombs. The Hammerers just move forward and say, hey, come and charge me, everybody. We're cool with that. But I've gone a bit wider. And the Anvil actually beats. I think I win against the chariot in combat. I think I do 1 wound to it, and it doesn't do any wounds to the Anvil. Process says that new Thane with gun on runestone definitely suits that ranged rune build. Will be the one I'll use for it. Yes, because even if you're not playing it as an Oathstone, it still looks cool. And it just looks like a cool rock to stand on if you're not playing it as an Oathstone. Okay, so I don't see a way back for the Dwarves here, unfortunately. And the main things that have gone wrong are units running away hasn't helped. The shooting, though, has been the main downfall. There's obviously not enough shooting in the list, because it's not really a list as such. It's just trying out some of the new Royal Clan stuff. And I don't think Quarrelers are really doing the job, compared to Rangers that I'm used to using, and you can't take them in the Royal Clan. So the Royal Clan seems like the weakest of the different lists so far to me, because you can't even take Gyrocopters, actually. So I'm thinking next time I might use the regular Grand Army, but using some of the new stuff, like the Engineering Runes, and maybe some of the new special characters. Because at the moment, I don't see how I can deal with this level of lots of fast units. The amount of shooting I had obviously isn't enough, but you can't take organ guns, you can't take cannons, you can't even take thunderers in this list. You can take a Thane with a handgun, so guns do exist. So, and Gyrocopters would have been very useful in this game for shutting down chariots and anything else that does impact hits. If you get to hit them first, you're obviously denying them the impact hits. So Gyrocopters would have been great for that role with their speed and their swift stride. Turn 5 for the beasts, and everyone into the hammerers. And this is the kind of fight you want to see in Warhammer, isn't it? So if I had invested in all the runes to stop opponents using their special weapons on the charge and to stop them getting an initiative bonus, then the hammerers would actually be striking first against most of this now. Which would mean that the hammerers would probably win, which means that the enemy wouldn't bother charging them. So you can see the dilemma. So the way to get hammerers in combat, I think, is to use an anvil and propel them across the table turn 1 with the pony cart to give them the extra speed, and put them right in front of the enemy so they have no choice but to fight you. And stick someone in there like Ungrim or Lord on Shield Bearers. And go from there. I think that's the only way to guarantee they're going to fight, unless you're standing a long line of hammerers in front of all your other units. For example, war machines that are shooting over the hammerers. So, what else is happening here? The Anvil is still in combat. You can see that these 3 Royal Clan warriors, there's only 3 left because loads of them have just been scorched by magic missile attacks. And there's only 1 left now. The Anvil takes some wounds as well. Loads of hammerers die, but we do kill some of the enemy as well. And that's how it looks at the end of the combat. So 1 Dragon Ogre dies, most of the hammerers die, and the Gore and the Chariot decide to continue the combat. The Dragon Ogres stay away. So it gets a bit messy in these situations where a unit is shrinking when they're attacked from multiple sides, because you have to decide exactly how you're supposed to move to not take units out of combat. And in this situation here, you can see the Dragon Ogres are now out of combat afterwards, because they wouldn't physically all be able to follow and stay in combat, because there's just not enough space for them all, by my reckoning. And there will be situations where that happens, because units do shrink in width as they get whittled down. But the hammerers are stubborn, so they're not dead yet, but it's only a matter of time. So turn 6 for the dwarves, and obviously the turns are very quick now, not much is happening. The Iron Drakes again fail to kill that 1 unit of harpies, and the hammerers are still in combat. The Anvil is still in combat. These Dragon Ogres were kind of trapped in position last turn by the positioning of the combat, but since the Anvil had to give ground in the previous turn, they've now got more space, and I think I have to do it again. All the hammerers die and the BSB. You can see this one hammerer actually, who's in a challenge with the enemy BSB. He's still alive, and he actually does a wound to him as well, which is nice. But he's obviously going to die. So turn 6 for the enemy, and the Anvil gets hit by everything. This final Royal Clan Warrior gets hit by the Harpy. And the Iron Drakes get killed by Viletide from the level 4 General. So they're just dead, no saves allowed. And what do the Dwarves have left at the end of the game? 1 Royal Clan Warrior and all of those Beastmen. So, first of all, I don't think I had a very good list. I think this Beastman list is quite interesting, actually. You might be able to make stronger Beastman lists than this, but I think this is pretty good. The Speed, the Razor Gore, and the Dragon Ogres are good. The Chariots are good. 2 level 4s is tricky to deal with, so hopefully that's a thing they're going to put a stop to soon. The different ways they can go about that, but the one that's floating around at the moment that I've heard, potentially, is that they're going to limit how many level 4s you can take. I think it was probably better in the old days when level 3s and 4s were usually Lords, and levels 1 and 2 were the slot below Lords. I think, was it just called Heroes? The lesser Heroes. So you just couldn't fit that many in with the points allowance for Lords, so you couldn't take multiple level 4s on Dragons anyway, or multiple level 4s at all. So I think they do need to limit that, because caster level is a huge deal. I also think that one issue with the game is that certain spells are obviously very, very strong, and you automatically get them because every army can just pick their spells in one way or another. So you're always going to pick the best ones. I think if the spells were actually randomly rolled and you didn't have ways to pick your spells, that would make Wizards a lot more interesting as well. Let's have a look what we've got going on in the chat. Gilthos has played in 2 tournaments where you can have 1 level 4, it's much better. 8 levels of total magic allowed, but only 1 level 4 allowed. I think that's much more reasonable. And level 3s are still good, they just don't look it at the moment because there's level 4s everywhere. Like the Anvil being level 3 feels pathetic and weak because it struggles to shut down the enemy magic once you've used up your auto-dispels, and all of its own spells get shut down by level 4s. So I would definitely like a limit on magic. I think it's too easy to pick the good spells. So if you're not going to nerf the spells, like Pillar of Fire, at least make it so that you can't just pick them so easily. Gilthal says, anybody that takes the Lore Familiar to pick their spells and then uses their army's signature spell is breaking the rules. Is that so? Pete says, yep, no brainer to choose your spells for few extra points. Why wouldn't you? Because there's always going to be some spells that are better than others. So I would be a big fan of a change that stopped people just picking their spells. I also think one thing they've missed out that they could have done with the Anvil to make it a bit more exciting and a bit more useful is the ability to like plug in different runes to it. So you actually get to choose which of the bound spells you have. I think that would be quite exciting for the Anvil, to have a choice of different bound spells, using different runes, plugging them in before the battle. But that's not a thing at the moment. Maybe in the future, you never know. So obviously, a big beastly win for the Beastmen. And I'm not that sold on the Royal Clan just based on this game, but also it wasn't a very competitive list that I took. The Royal Clan Warriors I think are probably fine. They didn't do much here. It's hard to say because when I was trying to wound the enemy I did roll quite badly and didn't end up killing that much stuff. But the Royal Clan Warriors aren't built for killing anyway. Because you wouldn't want to run them wide, surely, because it's more of a defensive unit, unless you're giving them great weapons. Let's see, Gilthos says, if you read the wording on Lore Familiar, you can only select from the lower list that you choose. You cannot then drop a spell and choose Viletide. Interesting. Okay, I'll have to put the word out around and see what people say about that one. And see if that's correct. That would change things though, wouldn't it? Because Plague of Rust is quite a big deal. having that combined with Vile Tide. So obviously not combining them in like a combo, but having them both on the same wizard. So you're reducing the armor of one unit, Vile Tiding a different one, and then putting your attacks that don't ignore armor into the unit that's got no armor left. Stu says, do you think Royal Clan would work better if you went all in on melee units? I don't know, because they don't have the damage output. Hammerers certainly do, but you have to tool them up. You have to put so many runes into making sure they actually get to strike that the enemy ignore them, I've found. Ironbreakers and Royal Clan warriors don't have massive damage output. Anything you give great weapons to would help, but I don't think so. Yes, I'm struggling to see a good list, but obviously if you take a king on shield bearers who can dish out some serious pain, that is going to change things a lot. I didn't take a fighty lord in this list because I took the Anvil of Doom instead. So that is definitely an option. You could put a lord on shield bearers in with, for example, the Ironbreakers to give them some killing power with like Master Rune of Alaric the Mad, so you're not allowing armor saves against his attacks. Something like that sounds like it could be good. So then you've got two killy combat units, then the Hammerers and the Ironbreakers both become pretty tasty in combat. So there are options, so I'm not going to totally write off the Royal Clan just yet. It just seems the least exciting of them all, because there's no gyrocopters, mainly, and they're very useful in an army that massively lacks speed. The Engineers Expeditionary Force lacks Iron Drakes, but it also has all the cool war machines, and you get other fun stuff to play with in there as well. You've got the Engineers, the Engineer Sappers, you've got the improved Miners in there as well. But the Grand Army, you don't get, obviously, the subfaction bonus, like extra strength on the charge, but you do get to bring in some of the cool new engineering runes. So you can take the Thane on a handgun in the Grand Army, you can take Doom Seekers as well. And I think that's going to be the next thing I try out. It's just a Grand Army, but with some of the new stuff in it. But the fact that we've got 3 different sub-factions, essentially, is quite interesting. And it's going to give a lot of options going forward, especially when I've finished painting all these miniatures that I just bought, including Slayers, who I'm still looking for a place for in the list. But the great thing about this range of miniatures, especially the metal ones, however long it takes, I've got the miniatures now. So even if it takes another edition before a specific unit becomes the new hotness, I've already got it. So I'll be ready to roll. Future-proof. Just own everything and you can react to whatever rules changes come along. Gilthos says, I've been trying Royal Clan, but I find having 3 gyrocopters minimum is too important. Yeah, I think gyrocopters is just too good to leave out. So that is the downfall of the Royal Clan at the moment. Very sad times. Gilthos says, if you use Lore Familiar on Elementalism, you can only have 4 Elementalism spells. Okay, well I'm going to do some digging on that spell situation and spell selection. But there are other ways to either choose your spells or mitigate the randomness as well, not just through the Lore Familiar, I think. So, what's coming up next on the channel? Well, there's an Age of Sigmar tournament this weekend that I'm playing in. So more Stormcast Eternals action coming, possibly Sunday evening, if I get that report up then. There's obviously going to be the weekly battle reports from the game club. And also, there is an Old World tournament in about a week's time as well. So I'm going to try and furiously get some stuff painted for that. Probably the Lord on Shield Bearers and the Pony Carts I'm going to try and have done by then. Anything else, it might be pushing it, because I haven't got that much time to paint at the moment with all these events happening. And then in a few weeks it's Clash of Kings, the biggest Kings of War event of the year, possibly over 200 players, so that's going to be very exciting, getting my Abyssal Dwarves out for that probably, since they're the faction I've had the most recent play with in Kings of War, so that's going to be a lot of fun. It's in Nottingham as well, so not very far to travel for any of these events. And I think that's about it. Hopefully everyone looked at my very exciting video on my display unit that I put up the other day. The Kallax from IKEA with the glass doors showing off all my armies. And it's inspired me actually because that's just all my completed armies. I'm probably going to do a video at some point looking at all the unassembled or still in box or assembled or primed or partly painted miniatures that I've got. That's going to be a long video though, because I've got boxes and boxes full of unfinished projects that every now and then I do just go through one of the boxes and think, hey, I could paint that now, and it comes out and it gets painted. So generally things don't get abandoned very often, but some of them do, and I'll look at that in a video sometime soon. Okay, don't forget to like the video and subscribe if for some reason you haven't already. Don't forget to give me harsh critique of my Royal Clan list building tactics and the way in which the units were used in this game. Let me know if you've got a cool build for the Royal Clan in mind, or any of the other Dwarf subfactions, any other combos that you've come across in the book that you think would be fun to see me try out. And what kind of list would you like to see me take to the next Old World event? Other than that, don't forget to check out all the links in the description. Don't forget to check out the social media shenanigans down there. There's Twitter, Facebook group, Discord server, all that good stuff. And if you want to keep this red hot, spicy, succulent, tender, moist, finger-licking, good, dishlicious flow of content flowing into your internet stream, then why not pledge your entire life savings on the Patreon? And if you can't afford to pledge your entire life savings, maybe just a little bit, because what were you going to buy with it anyway, really? Just food? I think a little bit of hunger so that I can buy more dwarves is probably the way to go. Wouldn't you agree? Yes. Okay, let's wrap this one up. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for your comments, and your rules comments in particular. Because even though this game's been out for a while now, we're all still learning. I'm going to blame GW for that with their rulebook layout. So, all that remains to be said is, good night out there, whatever you are.